Good day and welcome to this edition of Healthier, Older and Happier. Have you ever believed something and later found that you were wrong? I have. A myth is a widely held belief which is not true. In this episode, we're going to discuss some myths about hypertension. Myth number 1, I don't feel unwell. I have no symptoms whatsoever, so I can't possibly have hypertension. That's not true. Hypertension is a symptomless disease usually. By the time people start having symptoms of hypertension, they most likely have complications. Remember, we can only say that your blood pressure is normal when we check. And normal blood pressure is blood pressure where the upper number, the systolic, is less than 120 millimeter of mercury, and the lower number, the diastolic blood pressure, is less than 80 millimeter of mercury. So if you don't check, you don't know. And the blood pressure can just be high and doing a lot of harm to your heart, blood vessels, brain, kidneys, and even your eyes. That's why hypertension is called the silent killer. Myth number 2. Hypertension is a disease of older people. I'm young, so I can't possibly have hypertension. Again, not true. Yes, the likelihood of increase in blood pressure is higher as you and I get older. However, we are seeing more and more young people who have high blood pressure. The only way to know is to check. And remember, hypertension is a disease of both the old and the young. Myth number 3. No one in my family has hypertension, so I can't possibly have hypertension. Again, this is not true. It is possible that without any prior history of hypertension in your family, someone could have hypertension. The way to know is to check your blood pressure. Myth number 4. Several people in my family have hypertension. I know for sure that I will get it. Fortunately, this also is not true. There is strong evidence of a genetic predisposition to getting hypertension. In a study that was published in 2017 in the European Heart Journal, it was established that when parents or grandparents had early onset hypertension, which was defined in that study as high blood pressure being diagnosed before age of 55 years, their children and grandchildren were more predisposed to having hypertension. This was a study in which blood pressures were measured across 3 generations from 1948 to 2005. A genetic predisposition to developing hypertension does not necessarily mean that you as an individual will develop it. The expression of that genetic predisposition is the result of interaction of the predisposition with lifestyles that promote or accelerate the expression of high blood pressure. You will recall that in our previous episodes, we talked about some of these lifestyles. Today, we are going to emphasize some others as well as those that we had mentioned before. Top on the list of these lifestyles is a diet that is high in salt intake. There is a lot of evidence that sodium in salt attracts water to itself and increases blood volume, and by various mechanisms increases the tendency for the blood pressure to be high. So, reducing sodium intake, reducing salt intake is one way to reduce blood pressure. Another of the lifestyle measures is lack of exercise. We have talked about this from episode 1. Being overweight or being frankly obese, taking too much alcohol, and smoking are other lifestyle habits that predispose to having hypertension in those who are already genetically predisposed. So it makes sense, and there is evidence that even when people are genetically predisposed, avoiding these dangerous lifestyles can delay the onset of hypertension or totally prevent the development of hypertension. In another study involving over 277,000 persons who were followed up for several years, and which was published in a journal called Circulation in the same 2017, the report was that irrespective of genetic predisposition, healthy lifestyles were associated with a 30 to 33% risk reduction in the development of cardiovascular diseases and stroke. I'll put this very simply. Even in people who had a predisposition, to a genetic predisposition to developing hypertension, what this study showed was that if they were able to adopt the healthy lifestyles that we have been talking about, healthy eating comprising mainly plant-based foods, exercising regularly, abstaining from alcohol or limiting alcohol intake, stopping smoking, achieving a reduction in body weight if you are overweight or obese, all these put together delay the onset of hypertension or totally prevent the development of hypertension even when there is a genetic predisposition. Myth number 5 is what I call the salt myths. Some say, I don't take too much salt. I just take a little salt. Others say, I don't add food or salt to my food when it is already on the table. And yet others say, I don't use common salt. I use sea salt. Now, whether you are adding salt in excessive amounts while cooking or adding salt on the table while eating, or using common salt or special sea salt, salt contains sodium, and using too much salt in your diet is likely to increase your blood pressure. So just how much salt is adequate salt? The World Health Organization recommends for adults that daily salt intake should not exceed 5 grams of salt. What is 5 grams of salt? 5 grams of salt is a teaspoon of salt, a teaspoon of salt. For children, the recommendation is that the total intake of salt in a day should not be more than 2 grams of salt. So if 5 grams of salt is a teaspoon, 2 grams of salt is less than half a teaspoon. As you think about this, I want you to consider how close or how far away your daily salt intake is from the World Health Organization's recommendation. I would like us to move on and consider some measures to reduce salt intake that I would like to share with you. I would say that if you would consider reducing your salt intake, the best time to start is today. Number 1, you could deliberately reduce the amount of salt that you cook with. Number 2, avoid those artificial seasonings that are laden with salt. Instead, use natural herbs and spices for seasoning your food. Number 3, try cooking your staples without even adding salt. I've been doing this for years. I'm not hypertensive, but I like to walk the talk. And I find that you actually enjoy the taste of yam, plantain, rice, potatoes when you cook them without salt. You then get to appreciate the real taste of these foods, the way they were made to be appreciated. This is a big one. We need to avoid highly processed foods, canned foods, fast foods. And recently, these app delivered meals are becoming more and more popular. A lot of these deliveries are salt laden. If you decide to reduce your salt intake, you are going to get a shock, because for a while your food is going to be tasting quite bland. Fortunately, God has made our taste buds in such a way that they regenerate every 2 to 3 weeks. So what's going to happen is that in a matter of weeks, as the taste buds, those are the organs that are in our mouth and throat that enable us to appreciate tastes of foods and drinks, as they regenerate, you will find that you will begin to enjoy your meals at a lower salt intake. Myth number 6. I am not stressed, so I couldn't possibly have hypertension. After all, they say hypertension is associated with stress. Yes, in our previous episodes, we have taken time to talk about how stress, especially chronic stress, which is not properly handled, can increase blood pressure. However, it is possible for people who are not exposed to chronic stress to also have hypertension. Myth number 7. I will become a drug addict if I start taking medicines for hypertension, because they say these medicines have to be taken for life. I don't want to become a drug addict. Please know that if you have to take medicines for the control of your blood pressure or any other chronic disease for that matter, this does not make you a drug addict by any means. As we discussed in last week's episode, when elevated blood pressure or high blood pressure is detected early, it is possible by a combination of many measures: exercise, diet, weight loss, smoking cessation, limiting or avoiding alcohol, to move that blood pressure back towards normal. However, if that does not happen, you would have to take hypertension medicines. Myth number 8. My blood pressure is now normal, I am going to stop my medicines. No, that's not true, and that's dangerous. If you stop your medicines, the blood pressure will go up again and you can have complications. Myth number 9. I am praying for a miracle. I'm trusting God to heal my blood pressure, so it would be wrong to take medicines. Again, it's not true. In Matthew chapter 9 verse 12, Mark chapter 2 verse 17, Luke chapter 5 verse 31, Jesus says the same thing. He says, he that is sick needs to see a physician. So, if your blood pressure is elevated and you see a physician and you get a prescription, it doesn't stop you from trusting God for your healing. In my 3 decades of medical practice, I have seen amazing miracles of healing. I have also experienced some healings. However, I have also seen some needless loss of lives through assumptions that were not founded on truth. So if Jesus says a sick person needs a physician and you have medicines to take, you can trust God. When that miracle happens, your doctor will be the one to tell you, Madam, sir, you don't need these medicines anymore. What happened to you? So please, I would like us to remember these admonitions and hope that we are able to implement 1 or 2 or 3, preferably all of the truths that we have spoken to in this edition. If you found this useful, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's free. We'd also like you to stay updated on our content by hitting the notification button, and do please share with your loved ones. For more exclusive content, you could visit our website at aituaje.com, aituaje.com. We could also connect on Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, Apple Music, and Amazon. I look forward to seeing you next time.